There are a lot of people riding bikes in this town.
This Midwest state is hardly known as being a haven for bicyclists, but people are rolling around pretty much everywhere, even entire families. All thanks to building a place for bicyclists to actually ride.
There are cities that haven't done it right.
I don't want to be here.
If you do just throw bike lanes in,
Cars don't want me here.
you're asking for problems.
It's a lose-lose situation for everybody.
How a totally unhippie town took space away from cars and gave it to bicycles.
Do you have like one of those biker boxes at your intersection? And we're like, we don't have intersections.
And how this actually makes it better to drive around town.
I'm not anti-automobile. I'm just pro e-bike.
This is how roundabouts can make cars and bicycles into friends.
It's something magical that's happened here.
This is one of the main north-south streets through town. It's a road called Range Line. And look where the curbs are here. Way over here. It shows this used to be a much wider street. It was your typical suburban 5-lane arterial street.
That was probably in the 50-mile-per-hour range.
Joshua Kirsch is an engineering administrator for the city, and they were able to do the unthinkable. Take away space for cars and give it to bicyclists.
We change it to essentially one lane of road in each direction.
And typically you only find a project like this in places that don't like cars.
I lived in Portland, Oregon for a couple of years, and I really felt driving around there that there was a war against the car.
It is a town that canceled the freeway and then spent the money on light rail.
3 months ago, protests boiled over.
Did I hit your bike? But I just don't feel this here. Driving around Carmel isn't only adequate, it's great.
The Midwest is not the Pacific Northwest. Going to battle against the car here.
That would be a war that we would lose because this is Indianapolis. This is the home of the Indianapolis 500.
A place that invented a lot of the first race cars.
I mean, there are people in Carmel that own a fleet of cars. They're car collectors.
So it makes it all that much more amazing that the city was able to take a car lane away.
The road is just 2 lanes wide, and they've taken all this extra space and given me this really nice 2-way bike lane. The way to push that traffic inward is to put these planter boxes down, which I can't imagine cost that much because they look movable.
It doesn't matter if you're making the street bigger or narrower. Moving underground utilities costs a lot of money.
All the plumbing's already in place, the storm drain here and the gutters. And
Yeah, the city engineer is brilliant. And where he could save curb or save existing infrastructure, he did.
so when a big wide road gets shrunk down to a narrower one, the term engineers use is road diet.
Get your road diet started right
With Jenny.
Typically, somebody like me hates road diets because it can mean you get stuck in traffic. This 5-lane street needs a long enough green light to move all the cars that are waiting. But if drivers only have 1 lane instead of 2, that line gets more than twice as long, which means the green light needs to either be really long, which is bad for the side street, that means a lot longer red light for them, or not all the cars are going to make it through the green.
Feels like there's more congestion, it's slower to get across town. You feel like they're trying to punish you for owning a car. But in the case of Range Line here, it's not a problem. The travel time to get down the corridor from one end to the other is about the same as it was back when it was 5 lanes. And it's all thanks to roundabouts.
In the last video, we talked about how cars all bunch up while they wait for a red light to change. Green light, the clock starts ticking. Cities and states build wide intersections to squeeze through as many cars as they can and send that big group down the pipe to the next stoplight. Engineers call these platoons. And if you're on foot or rolling along on your bicycle, platoons can feel pretty intimidating.
Man, they're using all of those lanes just flying through here.
But unlike a red light that suddenly turns green and everybody goes at the same time,
Car after car, 3 or 4 lanes wide, all charging right after you, you know?
at a roundabout, cars enter and then exit fairly randomly. And if there's several roundabouts in a row, traffic becomes very random. The big scary platoon groups are broken up, and that makes a road feel less busy, even if it's moving the same number of cars.
Under continuous flow, it just kind of constantly has a little bit of traffic all the time rather than that big slam, that big wall of cars.
When you live here, you realize I don't have to really stop. The traffic just keeps on flowing.
You might have never experienced this where you live because, okay, you have one roundabout, but it immediately dumps into a stoplight, which squishes the random traffic back into platoons. But by going crazy and taking out every stoplight and replacing it with a roundabout, Carmel, Indiana unlocked random continuous flow throughout the city. You just drive and drive and drive, and you almost never have to stop. Certainly not for long. Carmel, Indiana is one of the most satisfying suburbs to drive a car through because the city committed to changing all of the intersections, not just one.
So I think you have to have a plan that involves not just doing one corner or one block. You got to figure out a plan that involves the whole corridor.
And because cars are moving all the time, traffic uses the road more efficiently, so you don't need as much road.
We've found that we can reduce the lane widths and still move just as much traffic, if not more efficiently.
3 lanes can go down to 2, 2 lanes can go down to 1. And in the case of range line, traffic gets through the corridor in less time than they did 2 lanes and stoplights.
Platform, a dashboard, and it shows you how much time you save, and the before, if you will, and you and the after, and it's fun to watch the one car just really outpace the other car.
And if a road can move the same amount of traffic just as quickly with less space, well, now we have a place we can put in a bike trail. So they did.
I can make a U-turn this way, but it doesn't feel real safe.
Clickbait! Your contributions pay for genuine moving violations.
Like that. The neighborhood streets have regular sidewalks, but once you get out of the neighborhood and onto the connector streets here, all of them have these multi-use paths. And I mean, all of the streets have these multi-use paths, and they make a lot better sense to me than a sidewalk because you can ride a bike or skateboard on it in addition to walking, and it keeps the bikes from having to be in a lousy bike lane that's kind of just tacked on as an afterthought right next to the cars. Personally, I'd feel a lot safer riding my bike here than over there.
And I'm not exaggerating, but I say these trails are on both sides of almost every major street.
500 miles of road, there's 200 plus miles of multi-use path.
It wasn't always this way. You can see from some of the older developments, back when they didn't require sidewalks, there just aren't any.
Thankfully, these tend to be in neighborhoods where drivers are going 25 miles an hour or less anyway. Pretty much everywhere else, the city seems to be adding these.
And I have to commend their commitment to really building a good trail network, because here's a perfectly good sidewalk that the developer put in long ago before the trails. And so I would have just connected the trail to this and saved some money. But they didn't do that. Even though there's a perfectly good skinny sidewalk here, they still built the trail over here anyway, the full 10 feet, to really make sure they had the entire network.
Every road has some bicycle infrastructure next to it. So all of the citizens of Carmel can enjoy that. They can walk out their front door like I do and get on a bike path.
You won't all of a sudden just end up without a sidewalk to walk on type of thing.
You know, your town, when they build a single bike lane and nobody uses it, it's kind of like if they just paved one road in your town and they wonder why nobody wanted to buy a car. Like, having the entire network built out is what makes something useful.
The tool wise cities and regions are using now is layered networking, putting the roads and the truck routes, the transit routes, the sidewalks and the bike lanes all on top of each other to see where there are gaps that need to be filled in. Here in Carmel, the hub to this entire bike network is the Monon Corridor, an old freight rail line that now acts like a bicycle freeway through the center of town, which at first was controversial.
They thought that bad influence was going to come up the path from downtown Indianapolis, and it never happened. I mean, just as we sit here, there have been hundreds of people that have ridden their bikes by on a Monday evening.
But a bike trail is only so safe until you get to an intersection where you need to cross the street. Well, once again, that's where roundabouts step in to help out.
Yellow lights are flashing.
It was something crazy, like 70,000 vehicles a day or something insane were coming through this intersection. And so we targeted this one for a roundabout to slow down travel speeds.
When you're driving down a street with stoplights and you see a green way down there, you have every incentive to hit the gas to try to make that green, which may mean going stupid fast past somebody on their bicycle. And speed pays off because you make the green light. Or, yellow. But there's no advantage speeding into another roundabout because you're going to have to go 10 or 15 miles an hour around it anyway. I mean, what's the rush? The roundabout's not going to turn red. This means drivers traveling slower speeds between the roundabouts, alongside the bike trail or the sidewalk, but also slower speeds when they approach the crosswalk at the roundabout.
You see, hey, there's something different about this. I'm not just crossing over some white lines.
It's not perfect.
One of the downsides of a multi-lane roundabout is that these entryways are twice as wide, which makes it a little more intimidating for somebody to cross. But I suppose it's not nearly as bad as trying to cross a 5-lane street that would normally be here, right?
You only have to look to the right because the cars aren't coming from the left. They may complain, oh, it's so hard to ride around the roundabout. But you know what? You're actually safer.
You don't have the platooning of 55-mile-per-hour cars coming through it. Instead, you've got single cars traveling at 16 or 18 miles an hour. And as a pedestrian or somebody who rides their bike, I'll take my odds with that. There's an 80% reduction in personal injury accidents, 45 to 67% reduction in accidents overall, 95% plus reduction in potential fatalities. I mean, these are real people not going to the hospital. These are cars really not going to the wrecking yard. This is your aunt or your uncle not dying at an intersection.
Sometime I'll have to tell you why all the parking lots in Carmel, Indiana are starting to disappear, get covered up with buildings. Turns out parking lots don't make money. By the way, I'm happy to report there are now over 600 people like you who pay directly for the videos, which means I can keep working for you and not for YouTube's algorithm.